So welcome to another Reviewers Read. Today we're talking about Hard Truths to Keep Singapore Going by Lee Kuan Yew. Now this was supposed to be the third memoirs of Lee Kuan Yew, and when he wrote the early draft, he wrote it to kind of solve the problem which he felt was going on, which was that the younger Singaporeans were basically taking for granted the success of the country, and he wanted to write a book which basically told them that it was not assured and precautions needed to be taken. And when he wrote the early draft, like a memoir fashion, the editor basically came back and said that it wouldn't change anything, because if he wrote another memoirs, those who believed in him would already keep to the same plan, and those who didn't wouldn't be keen to change anyway. So instead, what he suggested was more like a Plato's Republic kind of book, where questions and answers. I said the questions asked of Lee Kuan Yew would be hard ones, which would be not just what Lee Kuan Yew questions that he would put to himself. So it has a kind of a controversy to it that will get people reading. So Lee Kuan Yew agreed to it, and it is this book. On top of that, you get in the book a CD of the 32 hours of interviews. You get 2 hours of it, and it is in this CD here, which is sort of a very good edition. And so that's what you get in this book. So today we'll go through the same format. We will talk about the cons, the pros, and a conclusion. But in the middle of when I'm talking about this book, what I'll do is also show pictures from the book, from the archives, or a lot of pictures of him. And so let's get into it. Now, the first cons of the book is obviously it can get very controversial. For this book has a lot of topics which are, let's just say, would definitely stir the pot. One of these example is when he is asked, like, what does he think about the rise of Islam, Islamic resurgence. And his answer to that was basically it was not a good thing. And he even responded that in all candidness, that it was easier for, like, example, a Singaporean Chinese to get married to a Singaporean Indian person. But if a Singaporean Chinese wanted to marry a Singaporean Muslim, it would be very hard, because that person would have to change everything about himself to fit the Islamic faith. So he says stuff like that. As you can see, it's very controversial. He does give very, at least in my opinion, very good reasonings for it, and very practical ones. But like I said, it can cause controversy. And on top of that, he is a very strong-willed person. So when he gives a lot of his answers, it's very hard and strong. He does give evidence, which is the best part of it. But if you are not a supporter of him, it can come off very arrogant, unless you can just take the information for what it is. The other con is not really a con. The point is that the publishing house is Singapore's medium of newspaper, which is the Straits Times, and the book, of course, was written by him, or rather he answered the questions, so it can be seen as propaganda if you're that inclined, although I don't feel it's so. But again, it's one of those points that have to be taken into context, that I should tell you that it's written by these two. So if you feel it's propaganda, then I don't feel the book can add anything for you, because even if he gives the best points and you feel it's or edited, or it's written in a fashion only to blind the person or brainwash a person, then so be it. So with that, let's go to the many pros to the book. Now, the first pro of the book is obviously that there's a lot of good advice in the book. This is a man who was sought out by world leaders from all over the world for his views, because he was extremely candid and very practical and got things done. On top of that, for leader of a country, the world's smallest country, it's amazing how much power he wielded, in influence at least. So a lot of good advice is repeated from his first two memoirs. So if you read the first two memoirs, you basically get the gist of what he's going to say in this book. In fact, there's a lot more details in those two books and how he formulated those ideas. But in this book, because of the way it is written with an answer kind of thing, you get to feel more of his personality. And there's a lot of new information too. And what I would say the best thing about the book is you get to really know him as a person. Alright, like, he talks about a lot of things, like his wife had a stroke, and then his wife died during the writing and publishing of this book. So you get to his views on life and death. For example, he still had no religion to the day he died. He was not a sentimental man by any means, although he did have very strong feelings for his wife. There are questions about, like, who was his favorite grandchild, and that's the great thing I like about him. as a person. You know, many people when you ask that, they say the same old thing always, like, oh, all my grandchildren are my favorites. And he did say that, but in the end, he still at least gave you an answer. He said his favorite grandchild was his albino child, which was disadvantaged. And he was as he put it, a very polite fellow, you know, very well behaved and so on. So I really like that. He at least still gave you an answer, you know. Basically, I would say that this book is like Sun Tzu's Art of War. What is said in it is basically advice, you know, and whether you want to take advice is up to you. And his advice in this book is much more broader in the sense, you know. He tells you example, like, for example, you're a small country. Should we try to set up a world class company like a Nokia or something here? And he says no, because you know you don't have the potential of people of talent to keep coming in, and on top of that, the people coming in have to be foreigners, and people here are not too happy with the foreign situation. So you know you don't have that ever feeding talent pool, which in the end what's going to happen is that either the company gets bought out or it's just going to fail, like one of our companies now called Creative, which was a very popular company early on, now is only in the MP3 business and is nowhere near as successful when it first started off. So this, like Sun Tzu Art of War, it's just practical information which you should just read, and then it's like common sense. You should apply it to the situations that come up that fits, and it's all very good practical advice. To give you an example, he talked when they were asking him about you know, world pollution and how they should reduce carbon emissions and everything, and they told him, can there be, he sounded very pessimistic, and can there be any consensus, did he see any chance of the world reducing or saving the earth? And he said that it was all a total waste of time, like Copenhagen at the time and all that, because there was no country in the world which would give up growth to help save the world when other countries are not doing it, for example. So you know, again, it's very practical advice. He said what Singapore should do, you know, was when they asked him what we would do, is we have to adapt. You know, we have to take into account that no one's going to do it, so when it comes we should prepare for it instead. You know, but again, fantastically practical advice. You know, China's never going to stop unless they are given stuff for free. The US is not going to stop for growth, and so on. The other great thing about this book is the language it's written in. Now, from years of his wife, you know, helping him with simplifying his writing style and all that, it's extremely easy to read. You know, on top of that, I gotta say, after reading about how he changed his language from a less convoluted one, I too also am, you know, applying, like I said, practical information in this book, you know, applied to yourself. And I also am learning to write using simpler words instead of using big words, bombastic words for the sake of it. And to be honest, for vanity's sake, to write to sound smart. And the most important advice I think you get from this book is, again, it's a reinforcing of the first two memoirs, is that for any of the problems in this book, all right, or in the world, what you should do is always concentrate on the solution and not the problem. And the most important thing is to get to solve the problem, the solution. You know, like I said, he could easily have not answered a lot of the Muslim problems. In fact, when this came out, he said the stuff what he said about the Muslim population in the world. So that caused a really big controversy. In fact, there was a lot of coverage in newspaper about it, and he had to come out and talk about it and said that he didn't mean to offend anybody. It's just that he had to be practical and say what he felt in the book to be useful. In conclusion, this book is, I think, a fantastic book. Now, if you if you wanted more details, you should read the first two memoirs. This, I would feel, is a great book to supplement those two books because it reinforces the ideas. And I would say this book definitely lets you know the man much more. So it builds on the first two books. But read alone, if it's reversed and you read this first, I think it's not bad. It gives a lot of good ideas. And again, like Sun Tzu's Art of War, you can read and you can apply the knowledge to yourself. But after that, if you're interested, I would definitely suggest to go read the first two books to find out how he came up with his idea of why law in the country and non-corruption is so important, from what he learned from the Japanese occupation days and so on. So, a fantastic book. I definitely suggest it. Thank you very much. Till next word.